I'm Trevor, 29, and if you asked anyone who knows me, they'd probably say I'm the calm one in the family. The guy who never blows up, who quietly works, pays his bills, and doesn't get dragged into drama. Which is funny, because for as long as I can remember, my older brother Ryan has been a walking disaster. You know how every family has that one sibling who somehow always lands on their feet no matter how bad they mess up? That's Ryan. Growing up, Ryan was the golden child. He could skip class and still get a pat on the back from our parents. He could borrow my bike and bring it back with a bent rim, and mom would scold me for not sharing nicely. Meanwhile, I was the responsible one. Summer jobs, saving for my first car, working through college. When dad got sick a few years back, guess who handled hospital visits, insurance calls, and bills? Not Ryan. He was finding himself in another city. Fast forward to last year, when mom convinced me and Ryan to open a joint savings account for emergencies, things like medical bills for her, help with dad's prescriptions, or even repairs on the house if something went wrong. I didn't love the idea, but she insisted it would make things easier. You're both adults now. You can handle sharing money responsibly, she said. Famous last words. At first, it was fine. We both contributed, me regularly, Ryan sporadically, usually after I nudged him. It gave me a sense of security, like we had a safety net if life threw us another curveball. But slowly, I started noticing little things. Withdrawals at weird times, small amounts missing. I told myself it was probably just Ryan grabbing gas money or covering something minor. Then, 2 weeks ago, Ryan called me sounding unusually cheerful. Hey bro, guess what? Jess and I are finally taking that Europe trip we've been talking about. Jess is his girlfriend. Nice enough, but she's been in Ryan's ear about living it up before they settled down. I congratulated him, but a part of me wondered how he could afford it. Ryan isn't exactly known for budgeting. 3 days after that call, I logged into the joint account to transfer money for a car repair. My stomach dropped. The balance was almost empty. Not just a few $100s gone. I'm talking most of what we'd saved over the last year. My name was on that account. I'd been the one putting in steady deposits. It felt like someone had kicked me in the chest. I tried to call Ryan. No answer. I texted him. Nothing. Checked Instagram out of pure curiosity. And there they were. Ryan and Jess at the airport, smiling with their boarding passes, captioned, Europe, here we come. I stared at my phone so long the screen went dark. I didn't sleep that night. My brain wouldn't shut off. Anger, betrayal, disbelief. It all swirled together until I felt physically sick. I'd worked double shifts last fall to build that savings back up. And he just drained it? For a vacation? The next morning, I went to the bank. I asked for a full statement, printed and highlighted every withdrawal that wasn't mine. The teller gave me this sympathetic look as she slid the papers across the counter. You can file a fraud claim, she said gently. Even though he's on the account, if he took the funds without your consent, you have options. I walked out of that bank with a stack of paperwork and a storm in my chest. My hands were shaking, part rage, part adrenaline. I wasn't sure if I was ready to go nuclear on my own brother, but then I thought about Dad's medical bills last winter. About all those nights I stayed late at work just to keep us afloat. About Ryan breezily posting, work hard, play hard, on his story while I was crunching numbers to pay for our parents' prescriptions. By the time I got home, the decision was made. I filled out every page, attached every statement, submitted it. And just like that, the account was frozen. That night, I finally got a text from Ryan. A photo of him and Jess on a cobblestone street in Paris, holding wine glasses. Living the dream, man, it said. I didn't reply. 3 days later, my phone rang while I was at work. It was Ryan. I almost let it go to voicemail, but something made me pick up. The first thing I heard was his voice, panicked, almost shouting. Trevor, what the heck did you do? My card just got declined. I'm stuck in Paris with no cash. I can't even book a ticket home. I sat there in silence for a moment, letting his words hang in the air. Then I leaned back in my chair, staring at the ceiling, my mind buzzing with everything I wanted to say. And that's when it hit me. This was just the beginning. When I didn't answer right away, Ryan's tone went from panic to anger in a snap. Trevor, don't just sit there. Unfreeze the account. You can't just do that to me. His voice was loud enough that a few of my coworkers looked up from their desks. I slipped out into the hallway, my pulse hammering in my ears. You cleaned out our savings, I said flatly. It was a joint account, he shot back. I'm allowed to use it. You're making a big deal out of nothing. Nothing. I almost laughed. You took nearly $10,000 and didn't even tell me. That was for emergencies, Ryan. Medical bills. Mom and dad. Oh my gosh, Trevor, stop acting like the world's ending. You've always been dramatic about money. I told you we were going to Europe. You didn't say no. I gripped the phone so tightly my knuckles hurt. You didn't ask. You announced it after you'd already bought the tickets. And then you drained the account. He groaned on the other end. Look, Jess and I are stranded. Our card isn't working. We can't even pay for the Airbnb tonight. You're ruining our trip. Just unfreeze it, and I'll pay you back when I can. I could practically hear Jess whispering in the background, urging him on. My chest tightened, but I kept my voice calm. You're the one who turned this into a problem. I'm not bailing you out. Ryan swore under his breath, then hung up. I stared at my phone for a long time, half expecting him to call back. Instead, the text messages started. First, you're seriously being a jerk right now. Then, if mom and dad hear about this, you're going to look like the bad guy. Then, a few minutes later, you wouldn't even have that money if it wasn't for me agreeing to the account in the first place. Think about that. I turned my phone face down on my desk and tried to focus on work, but by lunchtime, it was buzzing nonstop. My sister-in-law, Jess, had joined the chorus. This was supposed to be a once-in-a-lifetime trip. You're punishing us for living our lives. Grow up. By the time I clocked out, there were 10 missed calls from Ryan and 3 from Mom. I knew that meant only one thing. He dragged her into it. When I walked into my apartment that night, I didn't even have my shoes off before my phone rang again. It was Mom. Trevor, she said, her tone clipped. What on earth is going on? Ryan just called me in tears. In tears. I repeated. He stole from me, Mom. She sighed. It's a joint account. He didn't steal. He just borrowed more than his share. You know how he is. He's always been a little impulsive. I laughed bitterly. Impulsive? He wiped out our savings and left me with nothing. That's not impulsive. That's selfish. Trevor, please, she said, lowering her voice like I was a child she had to reason with. He's in another country. He has no way to get home if you don't release those funds. That's not my problem, I said before I could stop myself. Her shocked silence on the other end told me everything I needed to know. I can't believe how cold you're being, she said finally. Ryan has always been there for you. I cut her off. No, he hasn't. When Dad was in the hospital, who stayed overnight, who drove you back and forth to appointments. It wasn't Ryan. I was the one holding everything together. Mom's tone hardened. You're being spiteful. This isn't like you. I raised you to take care of family. Funny how that only applies to me, I muttered. That ended the call. For a few hours, things went quiet. Then Dad called. His voice was tired, measured, the way it gets when he's trying not to take sides, but secretly already has. Trevor, son, I know you're angry, and you have every right to be, but your brother is in a tough spot. Can't you just give him a little money so he can get home? You can fight about the rest later. I pinched the bridge of my nose. Dad, if I give in now, he'll never learn. He'll do this again the next time he wants something. There has to be a line somewhere. Dad sighed heavily. You're not wrong. But do you really want to be the reason your brother gets stranded overseas? Think about how that'll look. To the rest of the family. To your grandparents. That last part stung. They knew I hated making waves. They were using that against me. The next morning, the group chat lit up. Aunt Linda chimed in first, clearly after hearing a very edited version of events. Trevor, I'm sure this is a misunderstanding. Ryan said you froze the account by mistake. Can you fix it? Then came Cousin Mark. Not cool, man. Leaving family stranded in Paris? I almost threw my phone across the room. Ryan was spinning this like I was the villain. Not him. Not the guy who siphoned thousands from the account for a wine-tasting vacation. Me. I ignored the chat, but Ryan didn't let up. Every few hours, a new barrage of texts would come through. You're making me look bad in front of Jess's family. Do you know how humiliating it is to beg for cash from strangers? If I miss my flight back, that's on you. Each message chipped away at my resolve. Not because I felt guilty, but because I could feel the narrative shifting. I was becoming this selfish brother in everyone's eyes. The guy who wouldn't help. The guy who left Ryan stranded. By day 3, I was exhausted. Not physically, emotionally. Everywhere I turned, someone was reminding me that I was the one holding all the power. And with that power came blame, judgment, and pressure to cave. Then, out of nowhere, Ryan escalated. He sent me a selfie of himself sitting on a curb outside what looked like a cafe, looking miserable. The caption read, "Hope you're happy. We might have to sleep outside tonight." Something about that broke through my frustration and hit a new nerve. Not sympathy, anger. The kind of deep, quiet anger that doesn't shout or throw things, but sharpens you. That night, I sat down at my desk and went through every document again. The bank statements, the emails, the fraud claim paperwork. I double-checked that everything was airtight. Ryan wasn't just careless, he was reckless. And if I let him win this time, he'd do it again. I drafted a single, simple reply. My finger hovered over the send button. I could feel my heart hammering, the weight of the entire family's judgment pressing down on me. And just as I was about to send it, another message came through from Ryan. This one different. "If you don't fix this by tomorrow, don't bother coming to Thanksgiving." I froze, staring at the screen. This wasn't just pressure. This was an ultimatum, a threat. And that was the moment something inside me clicked. I didn't sleep that night. I kept staring at that message from Ryan, reading it over and over until the words felt burned into my brain. Don't bother coming to Thanksgiving. He wasn't just threatening me. He was cutting me out of the family if I didn't comply. At first, I thought maybe it was just a heat-of-the-moment outburst. Ryan has always been dramatic when things don't go his way. But then, the next morning, I woke up to find my phone buzzing with new notifications. My mom had sent a group text. "Everyone, Ryan and Jess are stuck in Paris because Trevor froze the account. They have no money to get home. We're all chipping in to send them some emergency funds, but this could have been avoided if Trevor hadn't overreacted." There it was, in black and white. Not just Ryan's spin on things, but Mom broadcasting it to the whole family. She wasn't just disappointed, she was actively painting me as the villain. Within minutes, cousins, aunts, and even my grandparents started weighing in. "Trevor, we don't understand why you'd do something so extreme. It's just money. Ryan said he was going to pay it back. You should be ashamed of yourself, leaving your brother in a foreign country like that." Each message was like a little jab, wearing me down. I typed out several responses, then deleted them all. I wasn't going to plead my case in a group chat like a defendant in a family trial. By noon, I got another call from Dad. This time, his voice was sharper. "Son, your mom is really upset. Your brother says you won't even answer his calls now. Because every time I pick up, he screams at me." I said, trying to keep my tone even. "He's desperate," Dad countered. "They don't have anywhere to stay tonight." I took a deep breath. "Dad, I need you to listen to me." He took almost $10,000. Without asking, without telling me. "Do you know how many hours I worked to save that money?" There was a pause, and for a second I thought I'd gotten through to him. But then he said, "It's not about the money anymore. It's about the principle. Family doesn't do this to each other." That was rich, coming from him. "You're right," I said, my voice tight. "Family doesn't do this to each other. And yet here we are." I hung up before he could reply. I thought that might be the end of it for a day or two. Maybe the guilt trip would taper off if I didn't respond. But that evening, I got home from work and found something waiting for me in my mailbox, a letter. Not just any letter. It was from our family lawyer. Confused, I tore it open right there in the hallway. The letter was short, but it made my blood run cold. "Trevor, this is to inform you that your parents have requested the bank to release control of the joint account back to them for safekeeping due to a dispute between you and Ryan. They have asked that you voluntarily withdraw your name from the account to avoid further conflict. Please respond within 72 hours. I just stood there, gripping the letter so hard it crumpled in my fist. They were trying to take my name off the account I had funded more than anyone, just to give Ryan access again. I stormed upstairs, shaking with a mix of rage and disbelief. This wasn't just Ryan being reckless. This was my whole family lining up behind him, willing to rewrite reality so he could get his way. Before I could even process it, my phone rang again. "Ryan." I answered this time, my voice cold. "What do you want?" He didn't waste time with pleasantries. "So, you saw the letter?" "Yeah, I saw it." "Good. This can all go away if you just step aside. Mom and Dad will take care of the account, and I'll pay you back when I can." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. "You really think I'm going to just roll over and give you full access again? After what you did? You're making this harder than it has to be," he snapped. "Everyone's on my side. You're the only one still being difficult. You think that makes you right?" "I think it makes me the only sane one," I shot back. He went quiet for a moment, then said, almost smugly, "Fine. Don't say I didn't warn you. Warn me about what? I asked, but he'd already hung up. 2 hours later, I got my answer. A cousin sent me a screenshot of a Facebook post. It was from Ryan. A long, self-pitying paragraph about how he and Jess had been abandoned overseas by a family member who chose money over blood. There was even a photo of him looking pitiful outside the Eiffel Tower, like some kind of charity case. The comments section made my stomach turn. People I hadn't talked to in years were chiming in. Wow, can't believe your brother would do that. Some people really show their true colors when money's involved. Hang in there, Ryan. You'll be home soon. I felt my face go hot. It wasn't just a private family drama anymore. Ryan had gone public, airing our dirty laundry online, dragging my name through the mud for anyone to see. I closed my laptop and sat there in the dark, listening to the hum of my refrigerator, my heart pounding in my ears. It wasn't just about the money anymore. It wasn't even about the account. This was about Ryan turning everyone against me. About him deciding that my boundaries didn't matter, that my hard work was his to spend, my reputation his to smear. And as I sat there, staring at the crumpled letter on my kitchen table, something inside me hardened. I wasn't going to just defend myself anymore. I was going to make sure Ryan regretted ever thinking he could cross me like this. The next few days felt like I was living in someone else's life. I went through the motions, got up, went to work, came home, but everything felt heavy, like I was wading through water. I couldn't shake the pit in my stomach every time my phone buzzed. At first, I tried ignoring everything. The group chat, the calls, the passive-aggressive posts Ryan kept making. But silence didn't stop the storm. If anything, it made it worse. My absence became its own narrative. Suddenly, I wasn't just this selfish brother. I was also the coward who couldn't face what he'd done. One night, after a particularly rough day at work, I sat on my couch scrolling through Facebook even though I knew I shouldn't. There it was, another post from Ryan, this time with a GoFundMe link. Our family emergency fund was unfairly frozen while we were abroad, leaving us stranded. Anything helps. I felt my throat tighten. He'd actually gone and turned this into a public charity case. The comments were full of sympathy, and I noticed a few mutual friends had already donated. My anger and humiliation were a tangle inside my chest. It wasn't just about the money. It was about being made into the villain of someone else's story. People I'd known since high school were leaving comments like, "That's so cruel. I can't imagine doing that to my brother." I closed the app and set my phone down. For the first time in days, I let myself cry. Not the angry, frustrated tears I'd been holding back, but the kind that come when you finally accept something is broken and might never go back to how it was. After that night, something in me went quiet. I stopped answering calls completely. When Mom called twice in a row one morning, I silenced the phone and put it face down on my desk. When Dad texted, I left it on read. I even muted the family group chat entirely, something I'd never done before. And for the first time in my life, I skipped Sunday dinner. Sunday dinners had always been non-negotiable in our family. No matter how busy we were, Mom made sure everyone came home to sit around the same table. But that week, I stayed in my apartment, ate takeout, and turned my phone off. An hour into dinner, Mom sent me a picture of the table. Ryan's chair conspicuously empty too, since he was still abroad. "This is what family looks like, Trevor," her message read. "Don't throw it away over money." I stared at the photo until my eyes blurred, then set the phone aside. It wasn't just money anymore, and deep down, I think she knew that. The following Monday, I met with the bank manager in person. I wanted to make sure everything with the fraud claim was airtight. The manager walked me through the process carefully, explaining how they'd flagged the withdrawals and were investigating. "You did the right thing filing this," she said. "It might take a while, but we'll get to the bottom of it." Her calm confidence was the first real reassurance I'd had in weeks. It didn't make the pain go away, but it gave me something solid to hold on to. That night, I spread everything out on my kitchen table: bank statements, transaction logs, screenshots of Ryan's posts, even copies of the texts he'd sent me. Looking at it all at once was sobering. This wasn't just a misunderstanding. This was a pattern. Ryan had taken the money, spun the story, and then mobilized the entire family to pressure me into backing down. And when that didn't work, he'd gone public, using pity to make himself look like the victim. I sat there for a long time, just staring at the mess, until a thought started to form, slow, steady, like a seed pushing through the soil. What if I stopped reacting and started planning? Up until that point, I'd been on the defensive, reacting to Ryan's choices, reacting to my parents' guilt trips, reacting to the public fallout. But what if I turned the tables? That night, instead of doom scrolling, I opened my laptop and started researching. I read about joint account protections, fraud claims, and my rights as a co-owner. I learned that as long as the account was frozen, neither of us could touch the money, which meant Ryan's vacation fund was well and truly gone. It wasn't much, but it was something, a sliver of control. The next weekend, I did something I hadn't done in months. I drove out to the lake near our childhood home. It was late afternoon, the sun low and golden, turning the water into a sheet of fire. I sat on the hood of my car and just thought about the kid version of me who used to idolize his big brother. Thought about the countless times I'd bailed Ryan out, from paying his speeding tickets in college to covering his share of mom's medical bill last year when he forgot. Thought about how each time I told myself it was the last. And here we were. By the time the sun dipped below the trees, I felt calmer. Not happier, not less hurt, but clearer. This wasn't just about Ryan learning a lesson anymore. It was about me deciding I wouldn't let him keep writing the narrative of my life. When I got home that night, I cleaned my apartment for the first time all week. Did the dishes. Changed the sheets. It felt like reclaiming something, a small piece of control, a reminder that my world hadn't completely fallen apart. The following morning, I called the family lawyer who had sent the letter. Calmly, professionally, I told him I would not be withdrawing my name from the account and that I expected the freeze to remain in place until the investigation was complete. There was a pause on the other end. "I see," he said. "Your parents will be disappointed." "I'm sure they will," I replied evenly. "But this isn't up for debate." I hung up, feeling a strange mix of dread and relief. That night, Mom sent me another message. "We need to talk. Everyone is coming here next weekend. I expect you to be there so we can work this out as a family." It wasn't phrased as a question. I stared at the screen for a long time. A week ago, I would have felt cornered by that message. Now, I just felt ready. I didn't reply. Not yet. Because for the first time since this all started, I wasn't just bracing for the next blow. I was starting to think about how to hit back. The days leading up to the family meeting felt different this time. For weeks, I'd been carrying this constant knot of dread in my stomach, bracing myself for every phone call and message. But now there was something steadier under my ribs. Not happiness exactly, but resolve. The first thing I did was get my own financial house in order. I'd always been careful with money, but losing almost everything I'd saved in one reckless move had woken me up in a way nothing else had. I opened a new, entirely separate savings account in my name only. I set up automatic transfers from my paycheck, small, manageable amounts that would slowly rebuild what Ryan had taken. Just seeing that balance start to grow, even by a little, made me feel like I was reclaiming some control over my future. Then I called the bank manager again. We went over the fraud claim, and she confirmed that the account was staying frozen until the investigation wrapped up, something Ryan definitely wouldn't be happy about. "Do you want me to notify the other account holder of that decision?" she asked gently. "No," I said after a pause. "He'll find out on his own." After that call, I found myself sleeping better for the first time in weeks. No more 3 a.m. doom scrolling. No more staring at the ceiling rehearsing arguments I'd never win. I even started going to the gym again. Nothing crazy, just half an hour after work. It felt good to move, to sweat out some of the frustration that had been trapped in my body for so long. By the end of the week, people at work were noticing. "You look less stressed," my coworker said one afternoon as we grabbed coffee. "I feel less stressed," I admitted. And it was true, not because the situation was resolved, but because I was finally playing offense instead of defense. In the evenings, I started doing more research. Not just about fraud claims, but about legal protections, financial recovery, even mediation rights for co-owners of accounts. The more I read, the more I realized that Ryan's leverage over me had been an illusion. He wasn't in control. He just acted like he was. And the family played along because it was easier to let him be dramatic than to confront him. I also started quietly gathering receipts. Not just the bank statements, but old texts where Ryan had admitted to borrowing money before, screenshots of his posts, even Venmo requests from last year when I'd paid off his share of mom's medical bill. I put everything in a folder on my laptop, labeling and dating each file. It felt methodical, almost therapeutic. Each document was a brick, and together they were building something solid, a wall between me and Ryan's narrative, a shield against the version of me he was selling to the family. Meanwhile, Ryan kept posting online, painting himself as the tragic hero of this story. At first, the post got dozens of comments, people sending well wishes and donations. But as the weeks went on, the tone started shifting. People were asking questions. Where was the money going? Why weren't they home yet? Why was he still posting photos of fancy dinners in Rome if he was supposedly broke? I didn't comment. I didn't like or react. I just watched. It was fascinating, really, seeing how quickly sympathy could curdle into suspicion once people realized they were being played. Then, midweek, something happened that sealed my resolve. I got my first update from the bank's fraud department. Mr. Lewis, the email began. We've reviewed the initial evidence and determined that the withdrawals in question were made without your consent and do not match your typical spending patterns. We will be continuing with the investigation and pursuing recovery of the funds. I must have read that line 10 times. Pursuing recovery of the funds. I sat back in my chair, smiling for the first time in days. A real smile, not the tight-lipped grimace I'd been wearing around the office. The next day, I met with a financial advisor, something I'd been putting off for years because I always felt like I wasn't ready or didn't have enough saved yet. We went over everything: my income, expenses, debt, future goals. You're actually in better shape than you think, she told me. This setback is painful, but it doesn't define your future. We can get you back on track. When I left her office, I felt lighter. For the first time, I could picture a future where I wasn't just surviving, I was thriving. That weekend, I cleaned out my apartment. Not just a surface-level tidy up, but a full purge. Old clothes, junk mail, clutter I'd been holding onto for no reason. Bag after bag went to donation bins. By the time I was done, the place felt different, calmer, like it matched the version of me I was trying to become. On Sunday night, I finally opened Mom's message again. Everyone is coming here next weekend. I expect you to be there so we can work this out as a family. I stared at it for a long time. Then I typed back, I'll be there. But this time, I wasn't going to show up to be scolded, shamed, or cornered into apologizing. I wasn't going to be the quiet, responsible brother who just absorbs the hit so everyone else can feel comfortable. I was going to walk into that house on my own terms, with every receipt, every document, every piece of proof lined up like dominoes. And if they wanted a reckoning, they were going to get one. The week leading up to the family gathering felt strangely calm, almost like the eye of a storm. For the first time since Ryan drained the account, I wasn't flinching every time my phone lit up. I wasn't scrambling to defend myself in the group chat or justify my choices to anyone. Instead, I was focused. Every evening after work, I sat down at my kitchen table and fine-tuned my plan. I started by organizing the evidence folder on my laptop into clear, chronological order. First, the bank statements showing the steady deposits I'd made into the joint account over the past year, usually double what Ryan contributed. Then, the withdrawals that had started popping up right after he announced his trip, culminating in the massive transfer that left us nearly empty. Next, I added the texts. The ones where Ryan had said things like, "I'll pay you back when I can," which were basically admissions that he hadn't had permission in the first place. Then the ones where he threatened me, called me selfish, and told me not to show up for Thanksgiving. I even took screenshots of his public posts, the ones that turned me into the villain, and saved the comments. People telling me to do the right thing, accusing me of abandoning my brother, praising Ryan for staying strong. I wanted the family to see exactly how far he'd gone to play the victim. But it wasn't just about having the receipts. It was about knowing how to use them. So, I started practicing. It sounds silly, but I actually stood in front of my bathroom mirror a few nights in a row, rehearsing what I was going to say. Not a speech. I didn't want to sound scripted, but calm, deliberate statements that couldn't be twisted into an outburst. I pictured Mom trying to guilt-trip me, Dad trying to mediate, Ryan blowing up. I rehearsed staying calm through all of it. Because if there's one thing I knew about Ryan, it's that he thrives when I lose my cool. If I show anger, he gets to play the victim. Not this time. Midweek, I got a call from the fraud department again. "Mr. Lewis," the woman on the other end said, "I wanted to let you know we've completed our review of the account activity. The funds are officially being classified as unauthorized withdrawals. We'll be initiating a recovery process, and depending on the outcome, We may issue a refund directly to you. I blinked, hardly daring to believe it. So, I might actually get my money back? That's correct, she said. We can't guarantee the timeline yet, but it's moving in that direction. When I hung up, I just sat there grinning like an idiot for a solid minute. This wasn't just about revenge anymore. It was about justice. About the system confirming what I'd been saying all along. That I wasn't the crazy one. I wasn't overreacting. I wasn't the villain. That night, I decided to make one last quiet move before the meeting. I called a friend of mine from college, Nate, who now works in IT security. I asked him, half joking, how hard it would be to save a permanent offline copy of Ryan's posts in case he tried to delete them later. Not hard at all, Nate said, laughing. Send me the links. I'll archive everything for you. Within an hour, he'd sent me a folder with timestamped PDFs of every post, comment, and even Ryan's GoFundMe page, complete with the donation list. Thanks, man, I said. No problem, Nate replied. But what's all this about? I paused, then said simply, let's just say I'm making sure the truth survives what's coming next. By Friday, I was ready. My laptop bag was packed, my documents were printed, and my mind was sharper than it had been in months. But then something unexpected happened. Mom called. Her voice was softer this time, almost hesitant. Trevor, honey, I'm glad you're coming Sunday. I really want us to work this out. Me too, I said carefully. There was a pause, then she added, just try not to make it a big scene, okay? Ryan's been under so much stress. I don't want this to turn into a shouting match. I smiled, though she couldn't see it. Don't worry, Mom. I'm not planning to shout. And I wasn't lying. Because I had a different plan entirely. I spent Saturday morning preparing for every possible scenario. If they tried to guilt me, I had the receipts of everything I'd paid for over the past year. If they tried to claim Ryan was entitled to half the account, I had the statements proving I'd contributed far more. If Ryan tried to play the victim, I had his own words, in writing, showing he knew exactly what he was doing. That afternoon, I even stopped by a local cafe and ordered a box of pastries to bring with me Sunday. Not as a peace offering, but as a subtle way to show I wasn't coming to grovel. I was calm, collected, and entirely on my own terms. That night, as I sat in my apartment, the folder of evidence neatly stacked on the table beside me, I felt something I hadn't felt since before this whole mess began. Control. Ryan might have the family's sympathy, he might have the louder voice, but I had the truth. And soon, everyone was going to see it, whether they wanted to or not. As I turned off the lights and got ready for bed, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from Ryan. Can't wait to see what stunt you pull tomorrow. Hope you're ready to apologize in front of everyone. I stared at the screen, then locked my phone without replying. Oh, I was ready. But it wasn't going to be the apology he expected. Sunday came, and with it a strange, electric calm. I woke up earlier than I needed to, brewed coffee, and sat by the window for a long time just watching the light spill across the street. Normally, I'd have been dreading this meeting, imagining every possible way it could go wrong. But this time, I was ready. I dressed simply, nothing flashy, but put together enough to send a message. I wasn't here as the scolded younger brother. I was here as someone who deserved to be taken seriously. I packed up my folder, tucked my laptop into my bag, and grabbed the box of pastries I'd bought the day before. When I pulled up to my parents' house, there were already several cars in the driveway. My chest tightened for a moment, a flicker of nerves, but then I took a deep breath, grabbed my things, and walked up the front steps. Mom opened the door before I even knocked. Trevor, she said with a strained smile, her eyes darting to the pastry box. You didn't have to bring anything. I wanted to, I said evenly, stepping inside. The living room was full. Dad, a few aunts and uncles, my grandparents, even cousin Mark. And of course, Ryan and Jess, perched on the couch like they were about to receive an apology bouquet. Ryan looked tired, but the moment he saw me, his mouth twisted into a smug little smirk. Glad you decided to show up, he said, leaning back. I didn't answer. I just set the pastries on the coffee table, took my seat, and calmly pulled out my folder. For a few moments, there was silence, just the soft rustle of people settling into chairs. Then Mom cleared her throat. Trevor, we all wanted to talk about what's been happening, she said. Ryan has explained his side, and we think there's been a lot of misunderstanding and hurt feelings. We just want to move forward. I nodded slowly. I want that too, I said. But before we talk about moving forward, We need to talk about what actually happened. Ryan rolled his eyes. Here we go. I opened the folder and laid the first bank statement on the table. This is the joint account activity from the past year, I said calmly. As you can see, I made regular deposits, usually twice a month. Ryan's contributions were, let's just say, inconsistent. Because I was between jobs. Ryan snapped. I didn't rise to the bait. Regardless, I continued, flipping to the next page. 3 days before Ryan left for Europe, there was a withdrawal for $9,472. That withdrawal wiped out nearly the entire account balance, which I was entitled to, Ryan shot back. It's a joint account. That's how those work. Yes, I said, still calm. But what you're not entitled to do is take that money without informing the co-owner, then spend it on non-emergencies. And when I filed a fraud claim, the bank agreed. They've classified the withdrawals as unauthorized and are pursuing recovery of the funds. That got everyone's attention. A ripple went through the room. Dad stiffened, Mom's mouth opened slightly, and even Jess shifted uncomfortably on the couch. Ryan's face went red. You went to the bank. Yes, I said simply. Because you took money that didn't belong solely to you. And then, instead of apologizing or even having a conversation about it, you started posting about me online, painting me as the villain, asking strangers for donations while eating at Michelin-starred restaurants. I turned my laptop around and opened the folder Nate had made for me, clicking through screenshots of Ryan's posts one by one. The room was dead silent except for the faint clicking of the trackpad. Look at this one, I said quietly, zooming in on a paragraph where Ryan had written about being abandoned by his family. That post got over 200 comments. Do you know how many messages I got calling me heartless? Do you know how many people in this room called me, demanding I do the right thing? No one answered. Ryan was breathing hard now, his hands gripping his knees. You're making me look bad on purpose. No, I said, my voice like ice. You did that yourself. I'm just making sure everyone sees the full picture. I slid the last piece of paper across the table, a copy of the letter from the family lawyer, asking me to remove my name from the account. This, I said, was the final straw. Not only did you take the money, but Mom and Dad tried to strip me of any control over the account completely, effectively handing you a blank check. Dad opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. I know you thought you were de-escalating the situation, but what you really did was tell me that my contributions, my hard work, meant nothing. That Ryan's feelings mattered more than my financial security. The room was so quiet you could hear the clock ticking on the wall. Then, slowly, I leaned back in my chair. I'm not here to fight. I'm not here to yell. I just want everyone to understand that this wasn't a misunderstanding. This wasn't me being petty. This was theft. And I won't pretend it wasn't just to keep the peace. For a moment, no one spoke. Then my grandmother, who had been silent the whole time, let out a little gasp. Ryan, she said sharply, is this true? Did you really take that money? Ryan opened his mouth, then closed it again. It's not that simple. It is that simple. I cut in, still calm. And that's when it happened, the thing I'd been waiting for. Ryan snapped. You think you're so perfect, don't you? He shouted, slamming his hand on the coffee table. Always acting like you're better than me, like your dad's favorite little soldier. You think working a boring 9 to 5 makes you the moral authority of this family. The words came out in a rush, bitter and ugly, and the longer he went on, the clearer it became to everyone in the room that this wasn't about the money. This was about years of resentment, jealousy, and entitlement boiling over. I didn't interrupt. I didn't argue. I just sat there, letting him dig the hole deeper with every word. When he finally ran out of steam, the room was dead silent. All eyes were on him, not me. I closed my laptop slowly, slid it back into my bag, and stood. Thank you for proving my point, I said quietly. Then I turned to leave. And as I reached the doorway, I heard my grandmother's voice again, soft, but cutting through the silence like a knife. Ryan, I think you owe your brother more than just money. I didn't look back. I didn't go far. Just to the porch. The air outside was crisp and cool, the kind that clears your head. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, taking slow, steady breaths while voices rose inside the house. At first, it was just a low murmur, Mom trying to smooth things over, Dad saying something in that measured tone he uses when he's trying to be the reasonable one. Then I heard Ryan again, louder this time, his words tumbling over each other. She's taking his side now too? This is ridiculous. You're all just letting him humiliate me. I couldn't make out every response, but the tone had changed. The defensive energy was gone, replaced by something quieter, more serious. After a few minutes, Dad stepped outside. "Trevor," he said, his voice softer than it had been in weeks. "Would you come back in for a minute?" I hesitated, then nodded. When I stepped back into the living room, the mood was entirely different. Ryan was standing now, pacing near the fireplace, his face red and his jaw tight. Jess sat with her arms crossed, looking more uncomfortable than angry. Mom was wringing her hands, and Grandma was still sitting straight-backed on the edge of the couch, her eyes on me like she was seeing me for the first time. Dad cleared his throat. "Your grandmother wants to say something." Grandma stood, leaning on her cane for balance. "Ryan," she said, her voice quiet but firm, "you will transfer back every cent you took from that account. Every cent. And you will apologize to your brother, not just for the money, but for dragging his name through the mud." Ryan's mouth dropped open. "You can't be serious." "I am dead serious," she said, her tone like iron. "I have watched this family enable your behavior for years, and I have stayed quiet because I thought you would grow out of it. But this," she gestured at the papers still spread on the coffee table. "This was theft, plain and simple. And you tried to turn us all against Trevor to cover it up. Enough is enough." For a moment, Ryan looked like he might argue, but when he glanced around the room, he saw no one coming to his defense. Even Mom looked pale and shaken. "This is ridiculous," he muttered, grabbing his jacket. "You're all acting like I'm some kind of criminal." "You acted like one," Grandpa said gruffly from his recliner. "Now fix it." Ryan's jaw worked as he tried to come up with a retort, but none came. Finally, he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the picture frames on the wall rattled. Jess stood awkwardly for a second, then followed him, mumbling something about needing to cool him down. The room was quiet after they left. Mom turned to me, her eyes wet. "Trevor, I'm sorry. We should have listened to you from the beginning." "You should have," I said gently, but not unkindly. Dad nodded. "We'll make sure the account stays locked down until the funds are returned. And I'll talk to Ryan privately. He needs to understand the gravity of this." I gathered my papers and laptop, sliding them back into my bag one by one. The room still felt heavy, but it was a different kind of heavy, like a storm that had just passed. As I reached the door, Grandma spoke again. "Trevor," she said, "you handled yourself with more grace than most people twice your age would have. I'm proud of you." Something in my chest loosened at those words. "Thanks, Grandma," I said quietly. When I stepped outside, Ryan was standing at the end of the driveway, his back to me. He turned when he heard the door close, his face still flushed with anger. "You think you won?" he snapped. I looked at him for a long moment, then shouldered my bag. "No," I said calmly. "I didn't win. I just stopped losing." And with that, I got in my car, started the engine, and drove away, leaving him standing there, speechless, as the house shrank in my rearview mirror. On the way home, my phone buzzed with an email notification from the bank. I glanced at it at a stoplight. A message confirming the recovery process had officially begun, with funds to be credited back to my account within the next 2 weeks. For the first time since this whole nightmare started, I laughed. Not bitterly, not out of disbelief, but a real, relieved laugh. Because this time, the story ended on my terms. And as I pulled into my apartment complex, a thought crossed my mind, clear and sharp as glass. Next Thanksgiving, if Ryan wants a seat at the table, he'll have to buy his own chair.